I've had the bike for a while. I don't get enough time to put a lot of miles on it. I've got about 167 miles on the bike. But I wanted to give you just a little overview of my impressions of it so far. Starting from the front of the bike, and we'll go right to the back of the bike. The tires are really good, even though there isn't much depth to the tread here. They seem to grip really well. I've ridden them in gravel and crushed stone. I've ridden them through some mud and of course on pavement, and never felt they were slipping or sliding or anything like that. I haven't ridden them in the rain yet, so I can't tell you how that is. But in any other condition, they grip really well. The downside is they don't hold air very well, and I think it's the tubes. I don't know if the tubes are just really cheap or what it is, but I just came back from being gone on business for 2 weeks, and the front tire and back tire were both flat. So they lose air faster than any other of my bikes. So an upgrade on the tubes might be a good thing. The brakes work well. They're 160 millimeter rotors, and they have a lot of stopping power. No complaints about the brakes. The headlight is okay. It's good for about 10 miles an hour. If you're going faster than that, you're really going to be overdriving the headlight. This little system is something that I got off of eBay, and believe it or not, this aluminum housing on here and the dual LEDs and the rechargeable battery, $11. And this thing is like, it's like an aircraft landing light. There's 3 different levels of brightness on it, and it is really, really bright, much brighter than the stock headlight. You can mount this thing to the handlebars using the rubber strap. It doesn't grip real well. It will slide around, so you might want to find an alternative piece of textured material to put in here to grip a little bit better. But it does work. It works really well as far as brightness goes, and it's not much money. And of course, you can always upgrade the headlight with something brighter. Make sure that if you get another headlight, it can handle 48 volts, because that's the voltage that the headlight sees. It sees the full voltage off the battery. These are MKS FD7 pedals, which are metal and are folding pedals. The original pedals broke after about the 4th ride. They just snapped. They were really cheap. The whole thing was made out of plastic, and they just fell apart. You could feel when you were pedaling that they were flexing, and eventually they fell apart. I'm pretty happy with the battery, the 48 volt 10 amp hour battery. I took it out for a ride a couple weeks ago and put 22 miles on it, and at the end of the ride I was still only down 2 bars when the bike was at idle. Of course, if I hit a hill, then the bars on the battery graph would drop all the way down. The voltage would really drop, but at idle it was showing down 2 bars. So I'm guessing you could probably get, if you're pedaling the entire time, you can probably easily get 30 miles out of this thing, maybe more, maybe 35. I usually use the lower assist levels. Assist level 1, 2, or 3. I don't use the upper levels because I'm just going for a relaxing ride. But it's been really good. If you want to buy a replacement battery or a spare battery, I found them on Amazon.com under the name Joyisi, Joyisi. So do a search for Joyisi 48 volt battery and you can find them. They're about $299 and available in black. After about 100 miles or so, it felt like the gears were skipping as I was riding the bike. What had happened is the cable for the derailleur had stretched a bit during its break-in period, so I needed to tighten it up. There's a couple ways you can do it. There's an adjuster right here, which you can turn counterclockwise, and it puts extra pressure on the cable. That wasn't enough. I had to take a 5mm hex wrench and loosen this bolt under here, and then actually pull on the cable and tighten it up, and then make the fine-tuning adjustments with the adjuster here. and now it runs fine. If you go online and do a search for OMT M3, you can download a file that gives you all the information on the display, the different parameters, and how to adjust them. But I'll go through it real quickly. To get into the settings, you want to push the up and down buttons, long press them. Parameter 1 is screen brightness. There's 3 different levels. That's level 1, level 2, level 3. I find level 1 to be adequate, so that's where I leave it. To get to the next parameter, just push the second button, and that's miles per hour or kilometers per hour. That's kilometers and miles per hour. 3 is the voltage. That comes set at the factory, 48 volts. You don't want to change that. Auto shutdown time for the display. If the bike isn't in use, default is 10 minutes. I just leave it set to that. Number 5, number of assist levels. The default is 5 assist levels, but you can go as high as 9 assist levels or as low as 3. I find 5 to be adequate, so that's where I leave it set. Wheel size is number 6. And then you start to get into the ones that you really don't want to mess with. The number of magnets, the speed limit. Turning up the speed limit doesn't increase the speed of the bike. I think it's preset at the factory. It's built into the controller, I believe. And some of these other ones you don't want to mess with. Now you can either wait 10 seconds and it'll go back to the main menu, or long press the up and down buttons and then you're back at the main menu. I've added this rear rack to the bike, this Durbin rack. I think I paid about $25 for it off of eBay. It says it's adjustable for 20 to 24 inch bicycles. The only thing is it's not really meant for a fat tire bike, so there's some little things I had to do to get it to fit here because the bike's a little wider than a standard bike. This is what the rack looks like when it's put together. It's not really meant for a fat tire bike, so I had to kind of stretch this apart, and it does fit now. The problem is that they didn't give nearly enough hardware to complete the job. They've given extra screws, and these pieces are threaded here, but the screws are too small. So I think these are maybe an 8mm or an M8 thread, and this is an M5 thread. So they gave me 4 of these, but I can't use them. And then up on top, these aren't threaded at all, so I need nuts here. So this is going to have to wait. Because it's a fat tire bike and not a standard bike, it's a little bit wider, and I had to mount these vertical supports on the outside here rather than on the inside. And all the hardware they gave was wrong for the bike. I think they gave something like 6mm bolts, and it takes 8mm bolts. Get some stainless steel nuts and bolts to attach the rack. But once it's mounted, it's really solid. This thing is great, and I'll show you some of the things you can do with it. Once you attach the rack, you can then add other things like this basket. I got this thing attached with Velcro straps, so it's easily removable. It holds about 3 or 4 bags of groceries. I've done my grocery shopping with the little bike. And you can also pick up a cooler that fits in the basket if you have refrigerated stuff you need to pick up. So it makes the bike a whole lot more versatile. With the milk crate mounted, if you ride the bike to your favorite pizza restaurant, you can throw the leftover pizza in the crate for the ride home.